Wow, Charles, let me tell you right now, you're the message. Okay, that's the message, isn't it? I mean, isn't that our message right there? Our message is transforming lives. That's what we do. That's why we do what we do, is because of the kind of message you just gave, and that's why we're celebrating this. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. Thank you very much for that. You know, this is a great day. This is my favorite one of these of the year, and Harry knows this. We talk about it a lot. Of all the worship services that we do during the year, this is my favorite because it's the chance for us to kind of celebrate what we do and celebrate what you do. And there's not a better place to do it than right here in a home where every day you give nourishment right over there. But it's not just nutritional nourishment that you give. You give emotional nourishment, intellectual nourishment, and spiritual nourishment, and that's why stories like Charles's come out of this. So thanks to you, thanks to Colorado for letting us do this here. It's perfect, and at the same time, I told Diana before we got started, isn't that just your favorite picture of Jesus that's on the wall right there? I mean, that was in every Sunday school class I ever went to, was that very picture. Okay, that very picture. It's like you know you're home when you see that. Okay, I'm here. I'm going to act a little bit better right now while I'm here, while I've got that picture hanging on that wall. I'm going to be a little bit better than I might have been otherwise. This is just the perfect place for this. And I think we should absolutely thoroughly enjoy worship. You know, it needs to be reverent, but maybe not too reverent. You know what I mean? It needs to be something that we absolutely thoroughly enjoy. I think that's what God intends for us to do, is to enjoy this faith, enjoy the fact that we get the opportunity to spread His love throughout the world in the way that it should be spread and transform lives with it. That's why we do this. That's why we're here. And that's really why Maud and Ballington changed the world with what they did. And we're going to talk about them today. We're going to talk about how they did that, but also some of the contrast between that. Now, you know, we have folks that have followed in those footsteps, and we're blessed because ministry is about people. And it's about the people who actually help deliver that ministry. That's sort of what we're celebrating today. I have to tell you that you're very blessed to have Diana Kuntz here in this community and have been here in this community for all of this time. We are very blessed. Lifelong career. I mean, you just don't hear of that these days. You know, where someone spends literally their virtual entire career in the same ministry, with the same organization. We have that from Diana. She's been the harvester of our history, the greatest harvester of our history. You know, I mean, she didn't need Farm Aid. She was a harvester long before Farm Aid, the harvester of our history, and the curator of the best museum we have. The absolute best museum of Volunteers of America artifacts is right here in River City, right here in Denver, Colorado, is the very best museum. So there's not a more appropriate place, you see, for us to celebrate our history than right here with you. Because those of you who are here, you see it every day. You see those artifacts of that history. And that helps you remember why we're here, why we do what we do. So it couldn't be a better place. And of course, I have to mention that Diana is also the queen of eBay. The absolute queen of eBay, and she has scoured the nation and nations looking for artifacts and collecting those artifacts. It's great. And so thank you, Diana. Thank you so much for that. And when you have a leader like Diana, you know, good people attract other good people. That's kind of the way that works. They're kind of like a magnet. And today, we've a benefit from hearing both Don and Manuel give us the readings today, and thank you very much for your leadership. You voluntarily come to us and share this as board members, both local and with Manuel, double duty, local and then national, doing this. I can't promise you that we're going to get you a raise in pay and pay more, but I can promise that by volunteering with us, you will pray more. You will pray more from being with us. You won't get paid more, but you will pray more. We are lucky to have people like this. And this is the kind of spirit, that volunteer spirit, where they willingly come and do this. They don't have to do this. Willingly give of their time and effort to travel the country on our behalf at times, as well as the community, and do this. That's the spirit, again, that we celebrate today. And the reason we celebrate it is because, this is worship for us. It's celebration for us. But I learned early in the game when we started doing the worship services and streaming them live, and by the way, you have the best stream team in the nation in Hope and Alejandra and the choreographer Corey, who could do any Broadway play there is, and they could stream it and film it for anyone there is. We couldn't do this without them going on the road to do this. This sort of becomes a team builder for us organizationally throughout the country, because nothing is more intimate than sharing your faith with each other. It's the most intimate thing you can possibly do. And so I have to tell you that these worship services are better than any ropes course we could ever do. And besides that, I don't know I could do a ropes course anymore. It's sort of getting to that stage in life. So let's today really focus on retaining that spirit and reinforcing that spirit, reinforcing that passion that literally was there in 1896. Literally in 1896, when Maude and Ballington ventured out and did a very dramatic thing to start a new organization. There's nothing conservative about that. Okay, that's very risk-taking, extremely risk-taking. And it was at a time in America when America was going through great change. And part of what we're going to share today is the comparison of America today and America then, and the contrast of some great changes as well as leaving some old ways behind. That was happening for them too. Just to give you an idea, heavy industrialization in 1896, and just recent industrialization, very similar to our growth in technology today. As we look at the growth in technology today, and suddenly, we don't even consider it unusual not to have a landline anymore. And 15 years ago, that would have been unheard of, okay? Same with them, with their industrialization, creation of the X-ray machine, first time it was ever used in that same year. First time they ever used a rotary telephone in that same year. First time Henry Ford drove his car down the streets of Detroit, and I shared this last year, drove his car down the streets of Detroit on June 4th, and on June the 8th we had the first reported car stolen. Go figure. I mean, that's going to be one of those stupid criminal stories. Where are you going to go with the stolen car when it's the only one? Everybody knows you stole it. They know it's not yours. I mean, where are you going to go with that? I cannot believe that. Every time I read that, when I go back into the research for this story, I can't believe somebody did that. I'm sure Maude needed to talk to him. Okay, Maude absolutely needed to talk to him. But you had dramatic change there. So modernization, you sort of hear that flow of modernization, but yet, just recently, not so modern. You realize this was 15 years after, 15 years hence, founding of our organization, 15 years after the gunfight at the OK Corral in Tombstone, Arizona. Everyone's seen Wyatt Earp. Everyone's seen this stuff. 15 years after. That's like 1999 to us. Think about 1999. It's like yesterday. It's like yesterday. Just 15 years after the gunfight at the OK Corral, and even more importantly, 30 years after the end of the Civil War. 30 years. Now again, think of that for us. Think of 30 years ago for us. Around, 1985. 1980-ish. It's like yesterday to us. We still remember that. Vietnam ended further ago for us than the Civil War did for Maude and Ballington. Vietnam was further back for us. And we're still serving Vietnam veterans in our facilities day in and day out. Guess who the first veterans, Volunteers of America, served were? Veterans of the Civil War. It had only been over 30 years. And they were young. Many were in their teens that were serving. Okay? So think of that. You don't think we're in the love business? That we've always been in the love business? Think about loving people who just 30 years ago were trying to kill you or your family or maybe did. And now it's time to truly practice turning the other cheek and loving your enemy. Think about that. This is the world that Maude and Ballington were living in. This is the world they were showing, literally showing how to turn the other cheek. totally leave that history that's only 30 years ago, the most divisive conflict in our country. We still reel from it. Still reel from that conflict. Horrible conflict. And it was in the midst of that they were preaching reconciliation. In the midst of that they were looking at redemption. In the midst of that they were serving veterans. Didn't matter where from. Did not matter where from. Was still the memories very much alive. Can you imagine how alive those memories had to be at that time? No. Modernization on one side, very recent memories of being not so modern on the other. Well, we face similar kinds of things today. Similar kinds of things today. Literally, as they launched it, that means they had to be willing to take risks. It was not a cautious move. To literally leave your family, and start a new family, not knowing what the outcome was going to be. There was no startup government grant waiting for them. Okay? There wasn't an RFP, to start up a new organization. Okay? There was no RFP for that. It wasn't there. It wasn't there. And what I want you to get from this is what I gained from it is the fact that, this was not just business as usual. This was incredible out-of-the-box thinking. Incredible out-of-the-box thinking, very much risk-taking, very entrepreneurial. It doesn't get any more entrepreneurial. They had no way of financially supporting this, no way of knowing how it would be financially supported except by faith. Except literally by faith. Now that's living your faith. When you are so convinced that you can do better, so convinced that this can be more impactful, and so convinced that this is your mission in life and our mission collectively to spread God's love into the world by caring for those, as the scripture said to us, visiting the fatherless and the widows in their affliction, demonstrating our faith in God's love by good works, provision of food and clothing. Literally doing that. Faith without works is dead. Providing those works, believing then that it will be provided for by launching out on your own to do that. It was incredibly out of the box. That's what we'd call it today. It's exactly what we'd call it today. Think of Maude and Ballington in the same way you think of Steve Jobs and Apple. Just think of it in those terms for a moment. It was absolutely that innovative and that creative at that time. At a time when there was great change going on in their world, from very basic to very modernized at the very same time. And not necessarily all that safe, physically safe. When I think of the fact that there were gunfights just 15 years before that, okay, and then here Maude is going into prisons and going into places and opening for one and all to come in. And, they hadn't been checking their guns at the door, but for about 5 years, think about that. This was incredibly risky for anyone, much less a woman that was alone, to be doing that. Thank goodness Ballington was big. Okay? Thank goodness he was tall, and a great big guy. You kind of needed to be in those days, It's kind of funny why all those Western heroes are all tall. None of them are short like me, okay? They're all tall, from Wyatt Earp to Ballington Booth, They're all up there. You kind of had to be. I believe that our connection with them is really about going beyond what we've already done. You see, it would have been very easy for them. And this is usually what happens when you've accomplished something great, is to get complacent. And then you spend the rest of your time trying to protect what you've already built. Okay? Right? We see it in sports every day. And I know this is sort of a guy thing, but now girls are more active in sports too. But you see it every day where someone builds up a big lead and then they spend the rest of the time trying to protect the lead, and what happens at the end? Sometimes they lose. Yeah. As opposed to continuing to be creative, continuing to be proactive. This is what they were facing as they decided to be true risk takers. and to go out there and create the most dynamic faith-based ministry of service ever in the history of America, and to call it Volunteers of America. To do that. That's what they did. That's what we now also have an opportunity to do. To shift into the present, we're currently asking, and we shared this last year when we passed the 5 pillars of the organization before the field and before the board, and now we're going back into those pillars and asking the organization to think in terms of this question. If Maude and Ballington were to start Volunteers of America today, knowing what our challenges are today, what would we look like? What would we be doing? That's a very provocative question. That's the question we should ask ourselves now. It's the exact question Maude and Ballington had the opportunity to ask themselves. We today are inspired by their courage. Our challenge is to have just as much courage as Maude and Ballington had. To be able to risk it all. To know that we can even do more. Right. We may have to change the way we do something. Amen. Okay? We may have to do something different. We may have to take a risk, take a chance. They did. They didn't know the outcome. It wasn't guaranteed. We're in the very same circumstances as an organization. But you know what we ought to be focused on? We ought to be focused on, let's create a future that our successors will celebrate. That's what we should be focused on. Not protecting the past. Let's learn from the past. But let's don't protect it. Let's create a future that our successors will celebrate. That should be our mission for those of us who are our contemporaries. That should be what drives us, is celebrating that. Let's create a reason for our successors to celebrate in the same way that Maude and Ballington did for us. Let's be courageous in that. Very courageous in that. Based on our faith. Based on our faith that if we stay connected to doing this for the right reason, knowing this is why we do what we do, that it'll work out. It will work out. It will be an organic experience. Organic from our faith and from our compassion that flows from our 16,000 member family. I absolutely trust it. I do not have, and the board will tell you this, and Manuel will tell you this, I do not have a blueprint of how I expect that strategic plan to end up. I absolutely trust us. I trust you. I trust our ministers. I trust the people that are in our family that do this because they love it. Do this because they love it. I trust love a lot more than I trust money. Okay? I trust love as a motivator a lot more than I trust money. I believe this will happen for us. So I think our challenge is for us to be driven to ask the question, why not? Why not? Our focus this day should be on creating that future that no one goes without loving care in our society. That's what we should be driven towards. That no senior wonders where they will live or who will give them loving care. No single mother will ever feel alone in her insurmountable responsibility. No child will doubt whether their dreams are possible, whether their dreams can happen. No recovering addict will question their potential for redemption. No parent of a disabled child will wonder who will love them after I'm gone. No caregiver of an aging parent or spouse with Alzheimer's will feel alone and wonder, does anyone know what I'm dealing with? As each of us does our part in moving the ministry of Volunteers of America forward, it is up to us individually and collectively to demonstrate the courage, creativity, and love that we celebrate today, as was demonstrated by our founders, Maude and Ballington Booth, and do that to the best of our ability. Shall we pray? Dear Lord, give us the strength and courage required to love those in need in more creative and effective ways than we've ever imagined. Bless our caregivers. Bless our caregivers with insight and inspiration. We thank you for the beautiful people who have been inspired by you to serve in all ministries for the betterment of mankind. May all ministries of love flourish and change the world. Amen.
Amen.